Welcome to the Roundtable on comics, gender, and race, gender, and sexuality in comics. It'll be a bit more wide-ranging than that, I'm sure. We'll talk about lots of different pop culture aspects. This is the third one of these that we have done, and you guys repeatedly and constantly astound us with your dedication and attendance numbers to each one, so thank you all for being here tonight. Please give yourself a round of applause. And as a kind of tit for tat, if you could rate us in the app, we really appreciate it.
And you might get a bigger room next year.
Next year,
yes.
For all of us, that'd be great. Yeah, this is one of the panels that we put on here for the Comics and Popular Arts Conference here at DragonCon. This is our 8th annual Comics and Popular Arts Conference, and that is many academics and professionals getting together on panels to bring you a nice blending and intersection of both academic and professional perspectives on all kinds of issues and thoughts and ideas in all the pop culture things that we love to do here at DragonCon. Comics, horror, film, TV, music, everything. We try to just get as many interesting, thoughtful perspectives on this work as we possibly can. And I think that tonight we have done a fantastic job of that. We have a really great selection of people here on the roundtable, and I think we're in for a real treat. On the roundtable tonight, with us right here, right now, we have me. I'm your moderator, Daniel Williams. Let's just get that out of the way. We have Ms. Kelly DeConnick. Laurenn McCubbin. Daniel Amrhein. John Flowers. Tini Howard. And Kari Storla. Our own cheering section. We are going to basically make this a pretty wide open conversation. The general topics, as I said, are race, gender, and sexuality, but they are all the kinds of social issues that we are all accustomed to thinking about in the intersection with pop culture. And we're going to spend a great deal of time just digging deep into these. And that's going to be done with help of you and your questions and the ideas that you want to discuss tonight. And so basically what I'm going to do is you're going to raise your hand, I'm going to point you out, or at some point perhaps Kelly Sue will actually, Phil Donahue it up and just kind of walk around and get down in with the people, and we'll see how it goes. We've got 2.5 hours to dig deep into these questions tonight. You're in the right place, and that makes you fast with the way you are truly in the right place. I wish. If I had my brothers, it would be. Right, we're eventually gonna have to water people. We're gonna have to go out and get some a bucket, wipe people down.
I like the idea that we got trained for it.
That's right. We got a coach. Exactly. We're in this for the long haul. So don't. Exactly. It's gonna be great. But all that being said, let's just jump right into it, and we'll take the first question from the audience, the first idea, the first topic we want to discuss.
Can I do a
Absolutely.
Right. So we've had a family emergency in our family. Thank you. My husband took off earlier today, and then things have gone a little bit south. And so I'm going to be seeing first thing in the morning. So I apologize that I won't be here for tomorrow's events or Mondays. We will make it up to you. If you needed something signed, and I'm not going to be able to do that tomorrow, I will hang out afterwards, right in this hallway, as long as they will let me. If you have it with you, or I don't know, we'll sign scraps of paper. I don't give a fuck.
We'll get it done. Get it done.
So anyway, my apologies, and thanks for your understanding.
All here with all the kinds of things that we were hoping to talk about tonight. So let's make this happen. Yeah, right here.
The rise of, I guess, independent programs, Netflix and Amazon have their own series. Do you see that as beneficial towards the sort of these stories, so they're not as constrained by Disney coming down and saying you can't do these things without intellectual property? Because then much more of this.
It's all right. Like I said, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Take your time.
Yeah, just but them putting out their own shows, I think that frees them up to be able to tell stories a lot more. There was a question in there.
No, I think we got it.
When you watch Sensei,
Right.
Sensei is the best example that I've ever seen. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, so now I'll be the donor.
Okay.
Because you said, oh, Disney's gonna come in and not gonna come in and say, oh, you can't do that with our stuff. Disney still owns the stuff. You know, Disney still owns Marvel. Disney is still got their fingers in whatever they do on Netflix. It doesn't matter, it's on Netflix. It's just it's still owned by Disney. It does mean that you're gonna see more stuff, and maybe, you know, they will take a chance on more diverse casting. Super excited to hear about the Luke Cage and Defenders show, and the fact that they cast Misty Knight is amazing. But you know, that does not mean that somebody from Disney isn't going to be there going, ticking off the boxes, you know. So.
Yeah, I mean, I have all sorts of complicated feelings about this, because on the one hand, there are a lot more buyers right now. So I have a concept for a show. So I'm under a contract to Universal Television, so that there's full disclosure, right? Now, they are a studio. So we develop television and then we shop it to various buyers. There are a lot more buyers than there used to be. And there are a lot more, so the pie is divided into smaller pieces. So from my perspective, and good news, bad news of this is like, no show is, shows are getting more and more niche, and that is giving us a lot more opportunity for diversity. The pie is being divided into much smaller pieces. You're never going to have a show that has ratings, again, like something like MASH, right? However, what concerns me is we had far more diversity on television in the 1970s than we do right now. And everybody watched the Titans, you know? Everybody watched All in the Family. Everybody watched, well, I'm gonna show you how old I am. Chico and the Man, okay? As we divide into smaller and smaller pieces, we are giving everyone the opportunity to only watch shows about people who look like them. And this is the thing that concerns me. I don't think, it doesn't hold that we have to have more shows to have more variety if we had more variety when we had less shows. So there's something larger going on culturally that I'm not sure I understand, and I find somewhat concerning.
Yeah, there was a theory, or an article or something that I read a couple of years ago. And they said it was because of the internet, you basically, you can have a disagreement back in the days before the internet. You had to get along.
I remember that.
With your neighbors, you know, you bumped up against who they might not have the same opinions as you, but you had to sort of figure it out. And the internet could basically ignore the points of views that you didn't
And both of those are really, they're really popular shows, but they only represent a slice of a particular experience that is relatable only to what I might call a dominant group within a marginalized group. And so when you're looking at something like Netflix and saying, look at all of the diversity. Yes, look at all of the diversity, but even marginalized groups are not one homogeneous whole. And to bring this to comics, comics have a tendency of representing marginalized groups as a homogeneous whole. They all appear the same, which is why I'm really glad for Evil Oprah. Because I had never seen a character like Evil Oprah in Captain Marvel. It's like Evil Oprah. But that's an example of how to do a marginalized group differently. So that's one of the concerns that I have about the growing, fracturing of our shared popular culture space. We will cluster around the narratives of the dominant groups within the minority groups, which is a problem.
I'm going to be a little bit more optimistic, which is weird for me because I'm normally not that person. But if you think about going back to like the social media and the internet, that kind of clustering or fragmentation, think about who you follow on Facebook or who you're friends with on Facebook or who you follow on Twitter. It's not necessarily just one group. So if you look at Facebook, you're maybe friends with people from high school, from college, friends with parents, or friends with people you maybe belong to. Like there's all these different groups, and those groups maybe don't just have one core thing. So if I look at my Facebook feed, I have people on all sorts of political spectrum, all places coming from all different perspectives. So there is this fragmentation, I'm not denying it, but as far as like what media you're being exposed to, it's not being entirely fragmented or bubbled.
Okay, I'm sorry. Hide your way down there. I'm totally going to disagree with you and be the negative person. Because there have been studies done of who's following who on Twitter, and that people only are going to follow people in their bubble, and they're going to turn off or mute or not respond to people who are not in their bubble. And I mean, the fact that the LA Times now has a columnist dedicated to this amorphous idea of Black Twitter, right? Which is not but the thing is, it's not just a one thing, right? Like it's not like you can say, okay, this is all of what Black Twitter is, because even within this idea of Black Twitter, there is socioeconomic stratus, and there is people who are academics, and there are people who are decidedly not. And it's not, the fact that there is now a columnist who, and basically their first column was, I don't know what this is going to be. I don't know what the deal is. And I think that the only way to kind of push back against this idea that you're only going to see what's in your bubble is find other voices, look for them. That whole, read a woman for a year. Like all of the authors that you read that one year, have them be a woman. Go, if you do not follow any Black people on Twitter, go follow some Black people on Twitter. Not like creepy follow.
Follow them around.
And then don't pat yourself on the back for it. To be like, oh yeah, so I have 3 Black people I follow on Twitter. Wait, oh my God.
I agree with you entirely, but I still stand by my point, which sounds like I'm trying to have it both ways. But I think Twitter is like a very different social network from Facebook. On Twitter, I do exactly what you say. On Facebook, I don't. So I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm saying that it's not happening 100%.
But to speak to the Black Twitter thing, I think that's actually a really good example, because Twitter is largely, at least the Black Twitter they're talking about, is largely used as a site of resistance against dominant narratives. And if we translate that into the production of media as a site of resistance against dominant narratives, you're going to end up with maybe the Black Twitter phenomena in the production of media. So if you look at, I don't know, Matt Fraction last night made a comment about the failure of Gail Simone's movement, where he said it sold really well online, probably clipping that works wanes in a sense.
It's weird to be, I mean, I certainly don't, I'm not arguing for fewer buyers, you know, or fewer outlets or fewer voices by any means. I'm merely concerned for the we'll never have a water cooler show like something like MASH was, or a shared experience, a national shared experience like something like Good Times was. You know, everybody identified with the family on Good Times because that was the only family on Good Times. You know what I mean? Like, that was the show that you watched. And I think that was so integral to this ability to cross-identify. I'm not saying, I certainly don't want to be heard as saying we shouldn't have all of, Hulu and Netflix and Amazon and, all of this. Which, by the way, none of them are like startups, okay? So let's not make the mistake of thinking that, but I just wonder what that fracturing does to our, our national tendency, or human maybe tendency to stay in our comfort zones.
The diversifying of media, it encourages flex.
Yeah.
Everyone gets to find what exactly they like and they stay in that general area, and no one really sees something new.
Yeah, and humanity, we're programmed for tribalism, right? But to be on the optimistic side, I feel like our challenge is to overcome that.
I think that brings up an important point. Like, it's really awesome that we're having this panel and we're all talking about this here. But if we just talk about it here,
Yeah.
it's not going to make what does it matter. So like, we need to go outside the panel, which is a really awesome point to be making this early in the panel. But maybe
Don't leave.
Stay here. You're done.
Hold on.
I was just gonna say, I work part-time in a comic store. I need any Valkyries, like, great one.
I like Valkyries.
Yeah.
Everybody know what Valkyrie is?
You guys know what Valkyries are?
Okay, we're gonna tell you anyway.
The Valkyries are an amazing group started by Kate Live. We have some honorary Valkyries here with us. But the Valkyries are a group of women that work in comic book stores.
Or
Or own comic book stores. Yes, many other
Or volunteer.
many owners.
or volunteer.
Or volunteer, or do anything, these are often anyone from event planners to the people that bring you up the counter to owners. One thing that, I notice a lot working is I go online to talk to other Valkyries about a book, or I go, on Twitter, and all my friends and I are talking about how much we love a book, and, I go to work and no one's reading the book, and that's for me, that's my challenge, is, I'm taking books that, I have my regulars that come in and only read their certain things, and I'm like, my regulars that, read Punisher, I'm like, read Midnighter. Like, you like violent stuff, but you kick ass, like, read this one. Like, also he's gay. It's a great book. It's an absolutely fantastic book. And that book, specifically to bring it back to comics, like, that book shocks me because I have a lot of friends who I go to be like, let me bring up this book because I think you should be reading it. And I have straight male comic book friends who are the guys that read Punisher who are like, oh yeah, that book's great. And I'm like, that is a really vital kind of success. Not to say that that's like the audience that we need to be pandering to, or like, but when you can get these people that would only stay in their up bubble, which might be really opposite from the bubble of a lot of people in this room right now. And Bitch Planet is another book like that, where so many people are, there are a lot of guys, like typical comic buyer dudes that we think about who wouldn't have read a quote unquote feminist book that are loving that book. And so I don't know, I think it's.
Can I tell you a funny thing about that though?
Of course you can.
Oh, yes.
So I despite our delays, even with the delays, the orders for issue 5 came in higher than the orders for issue 4, which doesn't happen. So yeah, so that's been really phenomenal. But we get amazing letters. We've expanded the letter section actually, added 8 pages to it. And we get a lot of letters that are, the sort of the story that you want to tell, that are the ones where there's a guy who's like, I picked this up because I thought it was going to be this, and it was this, and it's really challenged me and made me think, and thank you, and like, they're really tremendous. And in fact, there's one that really got to me that's printed in issue 5, but I also get letters. Sorry. I also get letters from dudes who are like, I really love this book, except for the feminist part. Like seriously, what part are you reading? The letters? Like I was like, wow! I want you to read it to me because I am fascinated.
We've got a couple of people.
I was gonna say, I feel like that woman has had.
Woman in the back and the gentleman in the front. Yes, you in the back.
So,
If we get you out.
hi. So I think that the echo chamber effect is an interesting discussion to have. But I am a little bit concerned about the idea of not being able to create a safe space in social media. I like what you said about, hey, you don't know what this person thinks, so don't follow a person, you don't know what they think, right? But I think that there's also I'm sorry, I hadn't formulated this while I was thinking, or listening, but there's also kind of a burden to be a constant source of education and representation.
And which is why I was like, so don't pat yourself on
Right,
the back.
exactly.
Don't go around being like, hey, black person I now follow on Twitter, let me ask you questions about being
Right,
black.
let me tell you about it.
And don't do that to feminists, and don't do that to trans people, and don't do that to people who are all of those things. Right? Yeah, it is not. It is very. It is common knowledge, and also super frustrating that it's not your job to educate anybody. Right.
So there's kind of, how do you deal with when you step outside of that safe space that you've created for yourself, right? Like, I've cultivated my friends and I'm following people that are going to talk to me and talk about things that I like. When you step outside of that and you get attacked, how do you deal with getting that sort of pushback, I guess, is the question that I'm asking. So, does that make sense? Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna sit down. All right.
So, I'm gonna do this one because my teaching assignment for this semester is multicultural perspectives on women, gender, and sexuality. And I'm a guy teaching this to a room full of 24 women and 2 guys who I would imagine had more experience with that than I do. I'm an academic. So one of the things that I have learned is that when I'm exiting that space where I'm familiar, where I'm at home, where my actions don't call attention to me, I am entering another space as a guest and a visitor. Right? So I listen to the things people say to me when I'm in that space, regardless of how angry they could be, right? Because I'm a guest in that space, and if they view that as an opportunity to inform me about some part of their lived experience that inspires those kinds of feelings, I have an obligation as a guest to listen and not rebut in such a way as to reinforce the kinds of privileges that I possess. So if I'm in the middle of a class and one of my students begins to hotly articulate some of her experiences of oppression, it's not incumbent upon me to say, oh, no, that's not how it is. It's incumbent upon me to keep my mouth shut and listen. And that's generally the only way that I manage to navigate those spaces. Now, if there is something that has relevance to my lived experience, e.g. racism, right, that comes up in that conversation, I can comment on that part. But it's not my place to step outside of that. Does that kind of make
from the other perspective of the minority speaking to the majority.
What do we do for people who don't take the lesson?
Exactly.
Shuts, when you are dealing with someone's lived experience, people who don't, take maybe you should just shut up and listen to that person's lived experience because that person has had their lived experience shut down so often. How do we take it again?
You moderate real well.
How do we take this and the lessons that we all have gained through our experiences and actually get it enacted by people who might not only not know these lessons, but might be reticent?
I can tell you what I do personally, this is my policy on Tumblr, is I give them 2 exchanges, so like 2 back and forth, where I try to acknowledge their point of view, see where they're coming from, try to explain this is where I'm coming from on that matter. If after those 2 back and forths, I don't see it going anywhere, if it's just getting really repetitive, if they're insulting me, I cut it off and I ignore everything they say to me on that matter from then on. It doesn't mean that I'm not necessarily getting negative comments and not fun things in my inbox, but at that point, it's not incumbent upon me necessarily to engage as a woman, and I am a white woman, so it is different in that respect, but I do want to try to not necessarily educate, but to work towards mutual understanding from both our positionalities, so that's the way I deal with it personally, but I think it's just
I'd like to take this moment to ask.
Unless you have an awesome ringtone.
Right.
Yeah.
Kind of got in the way of, sorry.
but that was something that took me a really long time to figure out and involved reading a lot of feminist theory, and Black feminist theory as well. So it's just, that's what I do. I also looked at what other people did and what other people's policies were, because a lot of people will state, this is my policy for responding and things like that.
Sorry to jump in, John, but I do want to hear from the side of the table.
So something I think is kind of the value of why we're all here, and something that, and this dovetails a little bit, I promise I'm getting back to where you're coming from. So there's a reason that we're all here talking about this stuff, because if we could all just print this in a rule book and all have it in our pockets, we would. This isn't math, this isn't science, it's liberal arts. It's what we're here in media studies, and the power of that, and why people go and we study this as academia and stuff, is because critical thought. And it requires critical thought. Every interaction isn't the same. We don't have a rule book we can apply. We do have, and this is what I always tell people when I'm in these situations, if I'm talking to someone one-on-one, is like, look, there's no rule book for this stuff, but I'm telling you that, I'm a human being. I'm telling you that, this is something that hurts me, or this is something that makes me feel lesser. You can say that you don't care about that, but you have to understand that makes me want to end the conversation. When someone looks at me and they're like, I don't agree. I think it's stupid that your feelings are hurt. I think it's stupid that you feel marginalized by this. Great. Well, what do I owe you of this conversation now? If we want to have a conversation about critical thought and, people's lives, people's perception of each other in the world, and how that affects literally our breath. If you want to have that conversation, we have to start by you understanding that when I say something's going to make you feel like less of a person, that you're going to respect those feelings. And if you're not, there are other places to be, not you're not doing it, but I'm saying if you're in a conversation with someone that's not respecting your point of view, you don't owe that person a damn thing. So it's rough because it's on one hand we're all here because hell, the bar is open. We're here to do other things. We're because we want to talk about this stuff. And if someone doesn't want to give you the respect to understand that you're speaking from lived experience, they don't want to think. You don't owe them your. And I just think if you want to, it's but I want you to understand. And it's sometimes you just be you don't respect me, go read a book. You don't have to respect me. You want to know something, read a book. People have written about their lived experience. You can read it, decide you like it or
coordinate your effort, but put your effort in a productive direction. You know, don't just bash your head up against the wall in the comment section with one person who is just doing this because he thinks it's fun. You know.
I'm now going to mention the Voldemort of online. Gamergate. Their biggest tool of the tools that they employ is I think is exhaustion, right? They are capable of exhausting even the most ardent arguer. You know, even somebody, and again, like everyone has said, you don't owe anybody anything. You also, it is healthy for you to figure out what your boundaries are, right? Just because someone asks you, you don't have to reply. There is absolutely nothing saying, oh, reply to this. You know, just because, and it is super healthy to say to other people, hi, here are my boundaries. You have crossed them. Go kick rocks. And block heavily, block all their friends. And then sometimes, and I know it's hard because I live a lot of my life on the internet, sometimes leave the internet for a minute, right? Sometimes get up, go outside, go find someone that you like. If there's no one near you that you like, I'm sorry. Netflix, something, go get a cup of coffee. They will burn themselves out after a day or two, right?
There's no coincidence that like the year I first started getting published was also the year I found all the really nice hiking trails in my town.
I walked my dog for hours.
So it's just like, oh, now I can step away from the internet. It's lovely.
Build a safe place to recharge and then do outreach. You know, you have to find like work-life balance if you want to look at it that way. You know, something that you enjoy doing, people that you can connect with, like-minded people who can help you and support you through all the muck and the mire that when you're out in the trenches. You know, you need like surely from that.
Hey, can we hold on a second? Is there something going on?
Yeah. Is there something happening back here?
He just keeps talking to everyone, and everyone keeps asking him to be quiet,
Sure.
and he keeps talking, and it's really disturbing.
If you can't be quiet during the panel, we're going to have to ask you to leave.
Always. And I'm trying to be quiet. I don't want
If it's causing you trouble, please step outside so you can get it under control.
I like to give my input into the panel.
Yes, sir. But if you want to be, you can raise your
It's
hand.
not appropriate, so I'm not trying to disrupt you guys.
But if you can't get it under control just yet, please step outside so you can. We appreciate it very much.
And I'll step outside.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
But at the same time,
But actually, oh my God.
Have a good night.
always.
So that whole exhaustion thing.
And go. So,
Sometimes you just gotta grit your teeth and say, I can find being like that.
fine. Yeah.
Oh, God, I can't really do talking, you know.
Yeah. So, we appreciate that. This gentleman over here in the glasses has been waiting very patiently.
Perhaps the diametric question to this is the internet and social media has provided unlimited real estate for different individual views, and considering there were over 400 scripted television series, television softwares, it would be easy for anybody to find their own individual niche. If a black, transgender, lesbian, furry finds their own channel on YouTube, that's fantastic. Right. Okay, but on the other hand, there is the human tendency towards tribalization. How do we prevent
only so much tribalization, balkanization that we can do before we start to bump up against each other again. And just full disclosure, I don't have an answer. I have some thoughts. But I would like to, yeah, I think that's a really important question for those of us who engage in and make and dissect and analyze media.
So I'm speaking metaphorically, so like you don't have to call the cops, but like you know how sometimes when there's like a regime change, a lot of people at the top get their heads cut off. Like I'm speaking metaphorically here, but I think the thing that's like really, really powerful about the internet is that you don't have to have money and power to gain visibility necessarily. I think you end up in this problem where you get this like reverse co-opting of people at the top being like, let's make it go viral. The kids like that. Somebody give me another cigar. Like, but really, like, it's this. Hopefully, if every like, okay, you end up with this problem where you're like, okay, well, we have like a token girl and a token black character for the girls and the black guys, and never mind the black women. And you know, it's horrible, horrible stuff. But like, hopefully, what you get is everyone's making good, making stuff. Some of it is good. Regardless of who you are, some of the stuff is good, and some of the stuff is bad. And when people in power say, we gave the job to the best person and the good stuff rose to the top, that isn't always true. But hopefully, with more real estate for people to create content, people can choose the content they want still. That so you don't have to, you know, there isn't just the one channel, the one YouTube channel for the one person in the world that's coming from your life experience. Hopefully there are 50, and a bunch of people will find one and all agree that one person's doing really great work. And then, you know, when maybe we lop some heads off and give that person a job. Metaphorically. Like, hopefully what actually happens is there becomes actual, real visibility. We have people saying, like, this person's voice is excellent, and we end up in a position where hopefully they are in some of the media powers that we.
Well, what you're describing is basic media darkness.
So
My point is, how do we get people to reach outside of their own comfort zone?
You don't make people do anything. What do you do?
Can you promote an idea? Can you promote a concept?
Look, if I could fix sexism and racism and transphobia and homophobia, I'd have done it this morning before fucking coffee. So here, we cannot control what other people do. And it is not our fucking business to control what other people do, quite frankly. Not when it comes to the level of manipulating. What we can do, though, is we can put ourselves in positions where we are uncomfortable. We can read books that aren't our own experience, so that we can write books that aren't our own experience, so we don't have a library of narcissuses, right?
How do we encourage other people to do that?
By doing it.
Lead by example. Why do people pick up anything? Because it's good.
It's that whole idea with, like, you know, you don't vote because your one vote won't count, but we're a whole room of people, and our votes will all then count. And then if we all, it can multiply and multiply and multiply and multiply. It is the idea that if you like a thing, and you think this thing promotes a worldview that you encourage, promote that thing yourself, and talk to people who you know are not perhaps on board with that worldview. Be like, no, you should totally try this out. No, hey, what if I bought it for you for Christmas? What if I bought it for you for Hanukkah? What if I just left it on your doorstep? What if I just followed you around with this book, like, well, okay, don't you think?
There's this like weird implication that's like, well, how do we get people to like books by women? Like, you get them for them, but they're
Also, women are people!
They're good. Like, there's lots of excellent authors and creators from all walks of life. Like, why have you picked up any book in your entire life?
Okay, I come from a public health background. So, I mean, maybe it's the intervention mindset or something?
Sometimes there's no interventionist policy that works. Sometimes all you
Yeah,
can
there's
do,
no needle exchange for this.
sometimes all you can do is to need a change, to make a deep cliche. Sometimes all you can do in this situation is make the art, is make the connections with the people whose worldviews are nearer to you. Not nearer to you in terms of the kinds of things you believe, but the people who are near to you. You can't, as Kelly says, you can't manipulate somebody into liking it. You can't manipulate somebody into believing a thing. I mean, you might be able to, but it's not moral.
You speak your truth, you live your values, and if somebody comes at you, you say, I don't give a fuck if you like it.
What you build a society, you build a society where the goal here is, in any building of a society, any building of a group, right? We're trying to build, we're talking about making the openness and the collaboration more. Right?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Well,
yeah, much appreciated.
I think we can all agree that it's not healthy for people to just remain in their own little silo, no matter what.
That's what I'm suggesting. And okay, I have a really quick story, and then I feel like all of these other people's hands.
Yeah,
need to
we're
be
going to need
addressed.
to bring in some other
So
audience voices.
this really quick story is I am married to a house badger, and my
She's not married to an actual badger.
metaphorical badger. And my husband badger's family, part of his family, is Floridian. And in the way I'm not making generalizations. We went to visit them. I said, being here is like being stuck inside of a hot racist sponge.
I'm not for it.
He does not agree with this family's viewpoint to the point where he will stalk them on Facebook, and every time they post bullshit, and they do it like hourly, he will be like, hi, here are some facts. Do you like facts? I have so many facts. delicious facts, and he will very patiently and very kindly, and with some of them he doesn't even use swears. Which I'm amazed by. I know. And he has, while he has not converted them all to the way and the light, he has gotten them to change their minds about a couple of small things. And that's all we can kind of do, right? Is like go to the people that we know that are not the people that agree with us and be like, hey, here's some delicious facts. And also this book. And maybe this book.
All right, we got a lot of hands.
Yes.
This woman over here by the wall, and then these two up front here, and then you. That's how we're going to do this, and then I'm going to come over here.
We should probably bring it back to comics at some point.
Yeah, so we'll come back around.
I would like to hear from each of the panelists on one comic or graphic novel that you personally found influential in the area of race, gender, sexuality, and you can tell us why.
Back to comics.
Yeah.
Or tell us for a second.
I feel like Kari and Jonathan are not going to talk for a while.
Yeah.
Kari, I'm sorry, Kari.
Everybody knows that it's fine. There are a lot of comics from either really influential areas of mine. Just to start with, one of the most influential characters for me has been Stephanie Brown. And it's odd because I actually started reading her with her Brian K. Miller's Fat Girlfriend, which was not a popular decision at the time.
yesterday we were talking about history of comics, versus gender, sexuality in comics, and one of the things that generally gets left out is disability. So I have ADHD, which counts as a disability depending on who you ask, or depending on who else you ask is not a real thing, which, you know, is kind of, I'm not going to talk about that right now. But a friend of mine gave me a comic called Sexuality. And most of you, the main character, one of the main characters, does have ADHD. And I read it, and I'm like, I have never read a narrative that talks about parts of my experience that I don't even talk about. And that was the only comic I did. So, and I, you know, like, yeah, just that one comic, because it talked about a part of my lived experience that, you know, outside of being black, receives some of the most vitriol. So, to say this thing that I experience as my experience doesn't exist, and then to have it represented fairly faithfully in comic form is a thing that meant the world to me. And I'd never seen it before, and it jumped to the top of my influential comics.
We're recommending comics that speak to non-majority experiences. Is that right?
That you found influential in maybe specifically in non-majority experiences or treating race or gender issues, or you can take it in a different direction.
Let's skip me for a minute.
Okay. Bring them back. Microphone. Go down the line.
So I'm gonna do two. I'm gonna do one that was really, really important to me and one that I recommend to everyone. One that was really, really important to me was a book called Strangers in Paradise by Terry Moore. That was the first time I'd ever seen, this is gonna be a really odd thing to say, queer women that were queer women the way I felt like a queer woman. Like, that book felt like I felt. The characters did things I did. That, to me, was a really, like, one of those books you read that it's almost scary. Like, you feel like someone, like, punched into your chest and, like, pulled your heart out and smeared it on a page and was like, we all know, read it. And you're just like, no, but I mean, it changed my life. That book is incredibly important to me. Another book just that I think is one of a really underrated book when it comes to representation is the X Factor Investigations run that Peter David wrote. Really,
You just made Scarlet Witch back, I'm very happy.
yeah, it's such a great run. It's really diverse in really interesting ways. Like Peter David talked about stuff, like with fans, like in the letters columns of that book. Like, it's such a tragedy that like when you get the trades, the letters aren't reprinted because people would ask him like, hey, you know, you have two male characters in a relationship and one identifies as bisexual and one has decided to come around and identify as gay and you know, but the bisexual character is polyamorous. Are you assuming that all bisexuals are polyamorous? And he took the time to specifically like, nope, that's his identity. That's not because he's bisexual. Like, really important stuff. And it kind of like, I feel like the book flew under the radar in a lot of ways. And there's like Monet, who's an amazing character, who's you know, one of Marvel's now many awesome female Muslim characters. You have, you know, Siren, who's dealing with alcoholism in a really realistic way. You have like all these just awesome things dealt with. And these people all work together. Like the team works together and they like have personalities outside of these identities. It's not like these cardboard stand-ups. It's like these really real people who you could all describe in multitudes of ways because of and outside of their identities. So I could talk about that a lot. It's a great book.
Can I guess? What? Oh. sorry, this is my bestie, so. Okay. Are you ready? Okay, let me rock. That's the problem. She's inscrutable. The problem is that hers is a TV show. Okay, so anyway, she's gonna kill me with her laser eyes. Okay, so yes, Love and Rockets is my seminal book. It is the book that I talk about the most. Part of it is that I found my people in that book. It was the first time I ever saw queer punk rock girls, and I was like, I know them. That is very exciting to me. And I always joke that I shoplifted X-Men because I loved Kitty Pryde, but I bought Love and Rockets. But then the other thing about Love and Rockets was I came for the Jaime, but then I went over to the Gilbert and I was like, what are all of these stories? Who are all of these people? And I was pretty young when I started reading it, and they did a comic about Frida Kahlo. Did not know who she was, and I was enchanted by the story about Frida Kahlo that they did as a backstory in one issue. And then Frida Kahlo led me to Diego Rivera, and Diego Rivera led me to the Mexican muralist. The Mexican muralist led me to socialism, and here we are. And it was, I do not know anything about this experience. I wanted to find out more about this experience. I am involved. And that was very, very important to me. And then the other one that I also would highly recommend is any of the Twisted Sisters books. So it was they're the female underground cartoonists that were doing stuff at the same time as Robert Crumb and Bill Griffith and all of those dudes who didn't get the same kind of attention. And it's some people that you've heard of like Katrina Robbins, but it's also some women that you've never heard of like Christine Critter or Doris Dana, who tell these amazing, heartbreaking, hilarious, gross stories that are just as valid as the dudes of that generation that just did not get the same kind of attention. And it was all because they were ladies, and all of the dudes ate all the air. And so any of the Twisted Sisters anthologies that you can find out about them.
So I'm going to take the question in a slightly different direction. Can everyone hear me? Yes. As the straight cis white guy on the panel, I have like my pick of things to identify with. Really, what influenced me the most was actually, I'm going somewhere with this, was the bad stuff. I happened to stumble upon like Claremont X-Men and things like that, and that's what made me love comics. And then I started branching out, and I went, oh my god, this is your power fantasy? Your power fantasy is essentially black people, people of color, women, don't have any power. That's really when I personally kind of started on my journey, was seeing how shitty all these other groups were treated in these comics written by straight white people. And that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about comics and talking about feminism in comics, is because that's how I came to comics, when I started noticing these things, these problematic elements, and then I found a community of people analyzing them and going, yeah, hey, look, here's feminist theory, and I'm going to apply this to comics, and I went. So I think the biggest influence on me were those, were really shitty comics that treated women really poorly and or underrepresented them. Picking up Justice League, and it's like 15 people and Wonder Woman. I love Wonder Woman, but like, once I started noticing that, but to give you a positive one, Why the Last Man? Yeah. Again, seeing, I think that I happened upon that at a good time in my life, and having that one straight white male gateway character. I'm not saying we need more of those, but in this case, it kind of worked. It really highlighted what I was already seeing in comics, and kind of brought that into the real world in a really great way.
Somebody, actually, thank you very much.
I was going to shake it like I was
It's seriously, I feel like we're in Doom right now.
That's all right. We will,
I'm so addicted to watching.
go.
Yeah.
Hey, give your book, yeah.
Okay, so I don't really. I could tell you the comics that have been the most influential on me, but they're not bastions of representation in any way. And then I can tell you comics that I think do representation well, but I can't say that they've been particularly influential on me because most of them are pretty new. I recommend those to you, but they're all the same books that everybody in this room would recommend to you. Ms. Marvel is fantastic. Everything G. Wilson touches is amazing. Do you guys know Princeless?
Yes.
Yes.
I like you guys so much.
Princeless is exceptionally well done, and also all ages, which is hard to find. Takio, you may not know, it's another all ages book that has a non-traditional family that is really wonderful.
His daughter wrote part of?
Yeah, Olivia Newton-John.
And are you the villain in it?
I am the villain in it. That's right. Miles Morales is an important figure. I don't feel like it's particularly, or I have nothing really earth-shattering to add.
I'm going to take a kind of a cop-out answer and say that there are no single books. There are moments in various books that have been kind of gradually enlightening and gradually resonating. Static Shock, back, as a kid, when we had, Justice League Unlimited and Jon Stewart and Blackest Night was one of the best episodes of that series ever. And just hands down fantastic. And basically anything that Cubby ever touched. And then things like Sandman, like the various kinds of work that you came to and bringing trans representation, queer representation into what was at that point the kind of popularity, and nobody expected. Things like that. No single thing was in the book entire, but there were these moments that all just kind of shifted how I interacted and intersected with the world through media. You two had your hands up a while ago.
And she has had her hand up
had
for
your hand up for a very
My
long
thing is
time.
no longer relevant to conversation.
I was sorry.
It always comes back around.
Okay.
We will make decisions. We will make choices. Okay, and go right in.
So since we're speaking of comics that have been influential to us, I recently got into comics with the very first comic I ever read, which was Alan Ewing and Lee Gavrett's Agent of Asgard. And in that, I found a kindred spirit in a gender fluid character, and also another character that was asexual. I am both comics. Agent of Asgard. It's Loki colon Agent of Asgard, but it's good. But I was wondering how do you feel on those very, if there was a character that was both gender fluid and asexual, having very unique characters like that, just me to read them and be like, and more inclusion of various genders and sexualities that are even more marginalized.
I've been saying just for you, I love that.
It's so good. I thought every single one of I got sent by
want to know, why are you doing that? And
Freedom.
all of my data is not in yet. So, she says like a sociologist. It's stuff that I'm still collating and thinking and chewing over. But Kel heard a couple of these interviews today, and the things that came out over and over again were representation matters. If I see myself in a thing, I will love that thing, and I will be passionate about that thing, and then I will feel whole. And other people's representation matters, because a woman described to me today about why she loved Bucky, because I'm sometimes a little confused as to the lady love of Bucky. And I was like, is it the hair? I was. And she said, it's because he lost his agency. And I understand how that feels. And I just went, oh my God, really? No, yeah, totally. And I got that. I was like, I understand why you love that now. And Bucky is not her, right? She doesn't have to see, Bucky's a white dude. And then I talked to a dude who does a gender flip of Spider-Woman. And he says all of his friends give him shit for dressing up like in a male version of Spider-Woman. And they're like, and if people ask him, who is your favorite superhero? And he says Spider-Woman. They're like, what, are you gay? And he's like, first off, second, that has nothing to do with it, and he's not gay. And it is just incredibly obvious that women can and are expected to constantly identify with male characters and find their heroism through male characters. But if a dude does it, it is a loss of status.
Also, I remember the first time I cross-played, I felt so liberated because people weren't looking at me and instantly objectifying me. And I could just go out and have fun and nobody cared.
Yeah, that has definitely been a big part of it too. There is a freedom, and historically, women have known that for a long time. Dressing like dudes gets you less hassles.
Just on that, like, my reaction about, like, wait, what's the name of that comic?
Loki, Agent of
No, I mean, like, when I asked that question, yeah, but thank you. Like, I'm asexual, so, like, the fact that there's an asexual comic character,
Her
like,
name is Mary Lillis. She's not confirmed asexual, but she's obviously biromantic asexual. And it's so good.
Well, you can't confirm the fact that you as an asexual person see that and identify with that. I think it's a lot.
and I'm sure I'm not telling you anything you don't know here, but, like, it's so rare to see that in media, and the fact that it's a gender fluid asexual character, I don't know that I've ever heard of that before.
One character is gender fluid, the other is asexual.
You got me extra excited. But yeah, that's awesome.
I want to find one who is gender fluid asexual, but I haven't
Right?
found one.
Yeah, right.
Well, and not everyone can write the thing, but when you find the thing, give the thing a lot of money. Give all the money to it.
Don't take your dollars.
Yeah.
I bought every issue and every trade and everything.
And you've told all of us about it, and we're gonna find it.
It's on my shoes right now.
Also, you're flexible. Gender flexible.
So I'm going to say the extremely radical thing. So that's not a niche here. It's just another representation. So to hear people say, well, do you, because I get that question kind of often, do you think there should be more niche black characters? Well, I don't think there should be more niche black characters. There should be more black characters. So that's just another example of the diversity of humanity. But, I mean, yes, but I think we should start calling them niche characters and start calling them characters. But to make a comment, a cosplay thing, I'm not artistically inclined. My skills lie in other places, like philosophy and doing things with concepts. But if I could create, I probably would end up cosplaying something, like Spider-Gwen or Miss Marvel or Captain Marvel, because they represent something that that I
like what I identify with Dick Grayson is that the fact that he always likes himself enough to get the job done even when no one else likes him. And even when other people are literally throwing punches at his head, he's like, that's okay, I'm gonna get through this by saying dumb stuff and smiling a lot, and that's what I'm gonna do. So, yeah, but I think I agree completely that like that shouldn't be, I don't think we should have to look at characters and say, well, like maybe their sexuality is the same as mine. Like I think that the characters that we get, and I hope you get or make, or gender fluid asexual character, and I hope that there are people from all over. Like I hope I read that character and find something with myself. I'm not gender fluid or asexual, but I hope that I read that and say I love them and I identify with them and they have that nugget of truth in them. So I think like Kelly's was saying, you speak your truth, and I think that comes through.
All right, there are people like literally behind me, so I'm gonna try to grab some from the wall over here, and then we're gonna come to this row right here. We're gonna start the entire yellow, then the bandana, then the kimono, then the blue shirt. We're just gonna go that row down, and that's how we're gonna do this. So.
Stand up so I can be heard. So one of the things that was said was that representation matters. The question I have is, how do you convince media executives that there's an untapped market or stories involving people who aren't white gays named Chris might actually have a market?
Oh, Chris!
No, Chris, it's really awesome. There's like 6 or 9 movies that have leads. 10. Sorry. But an example of this would be Empire, which was mentioned earlier. That was a very successful property that was not catered specifically to white dudes, straight white dudes. So how do you convince the executives of whatever media property that there is good marketing behind serving people who have been traditionally underserved?
Vote which Dallas. Vote which
Dallas.
Dallas.
I was about to say, we've had, you put your money on it. Unfortunately, money still is.
Look, I'll tell you what, I just did a whole round of meetings in Los Angeles with a shit ton of people that you're talking about, and every one of those meetings opened up with them telling me, literally every meeting, that they were interested in stories with complex female protagonists, which is thank you, Cookie. It is one big part of that, and thank you, Furiosa is another part. But yeah, it like when something makes money, all of a sudden there are conversations to be had, and those people will tell you how much they've been wanting to do this for a very long time. But yeah, they are taking those pitches right now. So that is happening today, and we are wrapping up. The next couple weeks are going to wrap up the broadcast buying. Cable buys all year, but broadcast is wrapping up, and they are interested.
Do you think hashtag activism helps that ever, like diversify Asian horror?
I do. I really do. And the thing is, it is very easy to dismiss selectivism. It is very easy to say, oh my God, it's just those people on the internet whining again, right? But you see the wave starting to crest. You see more stuff now being at least discussed, and on the floor of this show, you see more people dressed in diverse costumes, and you see more of the diversity of the fan base than maybe it's just that you just didn't notice it before. diverse things. And I love crafters. I really do. I love people who are like, I love this so much, I have to make a thing. And then I'm wearing the thing. And other people should wear the thing. I love that. And I think that that's, it is a very special thing about nerds. And I'm not discounting the dudes in the room, but lady nerds, you're so good at this. You find your other people and you're like, let's get together and all make the thing. And then we'll have cookies, and it'll be awesome.
If the production company doesn't make it, we will make it until they make it, and then you will buy it.
Look, I mean, Carol Danvers is not a bastion of diversity. She, is 6 feet tall, blonde, blue-eyed, looks like a Barbie. No, Barbie's like 12 inches. Carol is, she's 5'11". And according to the handbook, weighs 125 pounds. Carol's got a thigh that weighs 120 pounds.
It's like dark matter.
Carol Core spend money.
And they're loud.
And they buy a lot of t-shirts. And those t-shirts are licensed by Marvel. And Marvel like, wait a minute. Who this girl? And then we're gonna have a Carol Danvers movie. Oh, we need to have more female representation. It was because there's money on the table. And they don't like to leave money on the table. So if you find a character that you like and you find someone who has a license for it and is making a product that you can buy that sends that message, buy the t-shirt. If you can buy the toy, that's huge. I don't know why, but toys are the thing that they look at.
They're profit margin.
I know why.
No. Now there's a Captain Marvel toy. She's hard to find. There are two now.
And she's in the video games suddenly, right? In her costume. And sold at Disneyland and Disney World, right? You're like, suddenly she's good, she's popping up. And if you buy it, they will come to it.
Yeah, and here's the trick. Okay, don't tell anyone I told you this, all right? Secrets. We Love Fine has a blanket Marvel license, so they can make any shirt that is a Marvel character. They have to run it by Marvel, but they make it first, and you can sign up as an artist with them, and you can make the shirt, and they'll run it by Marvel, and then if Marvel approves it, it is there available to buy. So if you want to say, I don't know, an America Chavez shirt, or an America Chavez jacket, that is a place to make that happen.
What was that name again, please?
It's called We Love Fine.
We Love
F-I-N.
They also have a table here in
You're not supposed to spend money in your wallet to someone else before walking over there.
Yeah, because it's hard.
They still have that hard.
Yeah. So, I mean, these are not, I mean, I would, yeah. I would prefer that we were supporting
Creator owned.
Yeah, honestly, but I do do understand that diversifying the output from the the two companies that run 90% of our industry there's a big win in that. But yeah, I mean, Ms. Marvel, the Willow Wilson book that we mentioned before, that book sells hella good. The numbers on that book are Hawkeye and Ms. Marvel have like destroyed the book market numbers. Like they're amazing, and they pay attention to that. They care a lot about that. If you don't think that Kamala Khan is going to be showing up in other media soon,
She's suddenly in a bunch of other books.
yeah, you are not looking at sales figures because they're not that racist. Money's green.
It spends.
My last comment on the idea of slacktivism is a mom on Facebook and a dad on Facebook got real mad about the fact that their daughter went to Target and said, why are all the toys in the girls' aisles are stupid and they're not what I want, and why can't I just go to where it says toys? Why are these girls' toys? And they changed it. Right? Slacktivism, Facebook works sometimes for that stuff. You know? You just gotta be loud and persistent and love your thing.
I don't know if we will ever know for sure. I'll just tell you about that. Remember when the Force Awakens cast picture came out and they were doing their read and it was like literally like 15 white dudes and then there was like a black guy and a lady and everybody like lost their shit, and then like the next two casting announcements were women and one was a woman of color. We will never know, but I mean,
Come on. I'm going to give the academic answer. This is less about the slacktivism thing, but it ties slightly in. If we think about accountants as agents of an overarching system and a system that's driven by certain modes of inequality, the accountants have a vested interest in doing what's profitable. And what's profitable generally supports these systems of inequality. And so if you want accountants, the people with purse strings, to view diverse properties as profitable, you need to transform the systems that generate those values, right? What they view as profitable. And a lot of that, and here's where the slacktivism comes in, a lot of that happens through a multiplicity of means, right? So it's not one way of executing this social change. And just, Dan, just to get on the Force Awakens bandwagon, I know this is a comic panel, but John Boyega's character, there was like a 30-second clip of him with Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber. Right? No, and I mention this because that literally, like, when I was a kid, I grew up with Star Wars and those three movies, and only having Lando Calrissian. And now there's John Boyega, a black Jedi, who gets to go on the hero's journey. I'm having trouble articulating this because I'm so happy about that. We talk about the importance of representation, right? That's it. That generations of black nerds will see that and be like, what? They will see themselves, right? And so that social shift is so important. I cannot underestimate it.
All right, let's get started with this row. This has been a very patient row, everybody. So, sir in the yellow.
Okay, so this is kind of going back.
Oh, Spike Lee.
Thank you. Going back to the last question, so I apologize if I'm missing, but this promise to get to the question. But my favorite anime is Fullmetal Alchemist, and I recommended it to a few of my friends, and one of those friends happens to have one arm, and one of them happens to have a muscle deficiency thing that makes some of their muscles very large, and some of them weird. I don't know how to explain it. I'm not a doctor, but they read it and they came to me thanking me a straight white guy, that's all I really have. But and I only really saw it because if you read it, it's very clearly that it's like World War II games. And I just thought it's cool, it's representation for that. Cool. And I didn't really see it from any other perspectives of representation. But she came to me saying how she was happy that there was a character that lost two of their limbs. And that didn't let them stop them. Because to be honest, Furiosa can do more with her one hand than I can do. But she came to me and she's like, this. In fact, not only did he lose his limbs, he fought back from that and became better for that because like he uses that. And the person with the muscle deficiency was how she was very embarrassed of like it because to be honest, like he didn't like going out like pools or anything because people like stare at him. And he saw how Armstrong was very proud, like he was taking his shirt off to show his muscles, regardless. And he wasn't doing it like look I'm buff, he was doing like trying like he did it to like try when Ed was in the hospital. He was like, this will help you. Cheer you up. And he saw how proud he was of his body, just the muscles that he thought muscles were gross because of just how he was. And he saw this character so proud of his muscles, and he's like, I now feel better about myself. The question is there any characters or stories or anything that didn't seem like had any form of representation, but turned out to have a surprising amount just from like different perspectives?
That is. I've got one. It goes back to something I talked about earlier. So it goes back to Strangers in Paradise, because I love that book so much. But I love one of the characters in it, Francine. A lot of the stories about her like really struggling with her sexuality. But the other thing I love about it is that she's super tall and has a super big butt. And I'm like, one of these days I'm gonna cosplay you. Like you're me. There's even a scene where she tries to go in to like do an audition or something, and they put her in like a mini skirt and like a crop top, and like it's great because like it's drawn the way it would look on me, on like someone of my body type basically, like a curvy tall woman, but like. When I read it, I wasn't like, oh, I'm super embarrassed because that's how I look. I'm like, that is exactly how I would look, and she's awesome, and I love her, and like, so that story has representation from a lot of people. The thing that I think is great about it is that that book is written by a straight man, okay? And there's these like incredibly like moments that as a woman I'm like, whose brain did you eat to like gain? Yeah, right. But I'm just like, wow, like I'm always really amazed by like how, you know, the women in his art can be really beautiful and you know, really, obviously it's drawn to this very like curvy, soft style and like, there are pinups and stuff he's done that have that kind of like male gaze aspect, but there's like a truth to this story that just really got me. Like it was seeing a girl who like I'm not exactly like I'm tall and I'm big, but I'm not exactly buff like Wonder Woman or She-Hulk. So seeing like a tall curvy chick like crammed into this little itty bitty mini skirt feeling stupid, I was like, that's my truth.
It's a weird one. I guess it's a weird fitting question. My character is Lucifer. There's specifically the Mazikeen, and I can't remember her name off the top of my head, the waitress that works at Lux. Beatrice. Mazikeen and Beatrice's story.
I love this.
We're right here. The Mazikeen and Beatrice's story, because Beatrice finds that through this weird interaction, through the strangest of circumstances, she finds herself in her first lesbian polyamorous relationship with a demon in the Lord of Hell. Like, it's like this really.
Everybody remembers their first.
But specifically like that, the arc of her coming to grips with these, you know, this feeling of this is the first time she's ever found herself attracted to a woman in any way, shape, or form. This is the first time she's ever had to think about these aspects of herself and how all of that plays it's not like trumpeted, like, you know, Kari's not like, oh, look what I've done. It's just this, and then Beatrice fell in love with Messi. Like, and that's just very, it was very, very nice to see just that kind of subtle, complex game.
I'm gonna steal your idea and talk about a bad comic that I think was actually valuable, and I'm gonna ask you to be patient and wait. Tarot Witch of the Black Rose. No, so this is the thing about tarot, which is a titty book. It is decidedly.
Does she have a haunted vagina?
That's not tarot. Okay, the thing about Tarot Witch of the Black Rose was.
No, seriously, does she have a haunted vagina?
It's a different girl.
So there is another girl in that book who has a haunted. Okay,
I did ask. Okay. The thing about that book in the 90s, because that was a book of the 90s, along with Lady Death, is that a lot of dudes who read comics really wanted their girlfriends to read comics to dress like Tarot Witch of the Black Rose, but to read comics, and they gave those books to their girlfriends who went, I like comics, I think. Wait, what else is there that maybe doesn't have so much of the tits? And it got women into comic book stores in a way that other books did not until Sandman came. Right? Sandman was everyone talks about Sandman being the book that you gave your girlfriend to get her into comics, but the first book that did that was really Tarot Witch of the Black Rose.
I don't believe that for a minute.
And I will tell you, I have heard that story from multiple retailers, that they had women coming into their stores, and at first it was just retailers in Vegas. That told me that story, and I'm like, okay, it's Vegas. Come on. And then Rory Root told me that story. See, I totally just brought the authority figure into the room. If anybody doesn't know, Rory Root was a legendary comics retailer.
Rory Root is dead and can't dispute this.
You know, I'll back you up though. Full disclosure, so I write for Top Cow Comics, infamous for Witchblade. I love Witchblade. Witchblade is Sarah Pizzini is one of my favorite characters in all of comics. She is some really awful people have written some really awful stories about her, but like the same can be said of Batman. So you know. But like, I was recently involved in a roundtable discussion on womenwriteaboutcomics.com about all of our, because the last issue of Sarah Pizzini as the Witchblade is coming in October, and it was this wonderful discussion where all of these women from all walks of life, we had women of color, we had trans women, we're all sitting around talking about our very complicated but very deep love for Witchblade, and it was awesome. So I mean, you know, I'll back you on that because there's something there.
She believes me.
I don't want to fight Kelly Sue. I will lose that fight.
Good to recognize.
Are we? Oh,
we're gonna go down one.
Okay. I got nothing.
So it's interesting that you said Witchblade because I gave up Witchblade because of the too much tits. I liked Sarah Pizzini as a character. I thought she was incredibly badass, but I gave up Witchblade because it was just too much. But that's not the answer to the question. So the answer to the question was the one that comes to mind because I'm trying to think of it. At least recently was the new run of Batgirl where she's Batgirl with Burnside. Right, and so I picked up the book on a suggestion from a friend of mine. So I'm like, I should read this, right? And so I read it, and first of all, Batgirl is a graduate student, and there are very few comics about graduate student life. And she's having a freak out over losing the data for her thesis. And I'm like, okay, so we've got.
I feel bad for this lady up here. She's like,
well, not her office has windows, don't either. In her tiny office that she shares with like 3 other graduate students, they're all not like straight white dudes. Like there's a diversity of graduate students, and then she leaves and goes to like a computer science lab or something, and then there's a diversity of people in there, and then she's roaming like I'm like, yeah, I expected it to be like par for the course for like DC books, but in that mundane environment, it had a huge amount of diversity. And that's not even to mention the people that, you know, Barbara's living with and so on and so forth. And I was like really surprised. I mean, it's got its issues, but I was super surprised by the fact that there was a lot of diversity in like what might have been just throwaway panels between Barbara Gordon beating people up.
To kind of speak to the back row issues for a second, yeah, they had the really shitty transition, right? And that really sucked that they did that. But the thing that happened that was great was they went, oh my god, we totally fucked that up. We did not realize we were fucking that up, and we apologized profusely. And mistakes are super valuable, right? Failure is awesome because then you learn how to do better. As long as you learn how to do better.
And they changed it.
And they changed it in the trade, and then and that's like that's the thing that you can have the problematic phase, right? As long as you recognize that is a shitty thing. I like the shitty thing. There's other things about that thing that aren't that shitty, but I know that that thing is shitty. You know, and don't lie to yourself about it.
So for me, it would be the authority, and I love me some Midnight or Apollo, but that's actually not what I'm thinking of. There's a part with Angie where I honestly could not tell you what it is, but she has concerns about like her technology, and for those of you where she has like this connection with technology, so like basically she's wearing yeah, like nanotech. So that's like what she is, what she wears. So like that's the appearance she has, and she has like these insecurities about her, what she appears like. And unless I'm making this up, because I was just making some people in the audience. I'm not making this up. Okay. Like what she appears like, and so like part of that speaks to like the gender conformity and roles that women are supposed to adopt. The other part of it that I thought it really spoke to the interesting things about like assistive and augmentative devices. So there was some parts for like disability too there. So.
Hey, I apologize. I drank 2 pitchers of water. I'm gonna go.
Yeah.
I'll be right back.
Actually, for just a second, before we move on to the rest of the row, and we will come back and reincorporate the rest of the row, I want to call a brief, small intermission in case anyone else needs to run to the room. So, let's get back into it. We had a couple of more down this row. 1, 2, 3, and then I think
This lady in the back.
this lady, yeah, and this lady back here. So that's how we're gonna 1, 2, 3. That's you, sir, in the blue shirt.
There goes, just look it out for me. I didn't know.
And then in the red, and then in the white in the back. That's how we're gonna do this.
Welcome back, everyone. So, in terms of representation for, you know, sex, race, everything, etc., what are your thoughts on metaphorical representation versus literal representation? Like, you know, the X-Men, a metaphor versus a literally saying I'm bisexual versus something like this Marvel that takes an issue and says both, which is also the ideal. But what are your
Okay, nobody said anything, so I'll jump in.
You're very polite.
Yeah, I mean, I try. Sometimes. I really like the X-Men. That was a comic that got me into comics. That kind of primed me to see other issues that maybe I wouldn't have otherwise. I don't think it needs to be an either or thing. You know, I think that there's room for both, as long as it's done respectfully. There are a lot of X-Men comics, and I've read not all of them, but a lot of them. And the bad ones can be really bad. It's problematic when you say, this is an oppressed group of beautiful, beautiful, white, sexy people. Lollipops is so put upon, you know what I mean? Yeah, so that can be a real issue. You know, a bad X-Men story gets into some really nasty reappropriation where you're saying, or appropriation where you're saying like, oh, I'm going to take this struggle, I'm going to divorce it of any real meaning. I'm going to ignore the actual, you know, I'm going to take these experiences from these people, these real experiences, these awful experiences, you know, everything white. And then I'm going to sell their story to other white people, and then I'm going to be cashing that check. That's a real problem. But when done well, it can be done really well. And use this as an oppression metaphor has been done really well. Bendis' run of X-Men has done a lot of great things with use as an oppression metaphor. Seeing cops freak out when they see a mutant and like open firing on them, like it's not that thin of an allegory, you know. Yeah, but I think that it's powerful, and I think that as long as there's other representation, and in a way, I almost think that those thin allegories are almost better when you are borderline. You know, when there's a threat of maybe reappropriating somebody else's struggle, don't try too hard to remove the original context from it. You know, say this is the story that I'm telling. So I think that can be powerful, but again, we shouldn't have to choose. There are hundreds of comics coming out every month, literally. So I think there's room for both, as long as it's done well.
I'm really excited right now because this really has a lot to do with something I just finished in a HB Shield. There's a really awesome anthology on Kickstarter called Oath Anthology that's all queer heroes. And I have a story in it along with a lot of really other amazing people. It's like a beautiful cover done by Gunkiss, just like gorgeous. Who's a wonderful artist. But it was really exciting to me that the specific call for the anthology was for queer heroes, because for me the whole the superhero metaphor extends to a lot of things. One, like being a super ambitious person, sometimes you feel like you have to like put on a costume and leave all your friends behind and go follow this thing. Also because I'm bisexual. And there's a lot of issues in the bisexual community with feeling like the entire world wants you to pick a side. And it's like, you know, are you Batman or are you Bruce Wayne, and which is the real you? And it's like, well, they're both the real me. Like, it's not both, it's just one, it's just me. So I guess that was what I wrote about. That's what my story in the anthology is about. It's about a bisexual hero who has his girlfriend who does not have superpowers and is his normal life, and then he also falls in love with his sidekick, who is a man and who is a superhero. And the story's about how he deals with that without feeling like a traitor, and without it being too heavy. Like, I had fun with the story, which was cool. For me, it was like a way to work a lot of these things out for hopefully a really diverse audience. So I think it's cool when we're getting more of it, and because comics being kind of punk rock as they are, like anyone can just pick up a pen and make them. I think it's cool. I love working through my own shit with like metaphor, like superhero metaphor and sci-fi metaphor, and so for me, I guess kind of like getting back to that, like the literal versus the metaphorical. Like I like both. Both is good. Like I like both. I like being able to do both. I like being able to hear from people who have real world marginalized experiences writing about like sci-fi and superhero marginalization as well. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that was a very good answer, and I hope it didn't seem like I was just trying to plug this thing I'm part of. It's called Oath Anthology, and there's some really pretty art. That's my artist. That's from my story. She's Benita Barik. She's amazing. I'm a hello. Retweet that. But yeah, like that's, and it's cool because all the contributors are LGBTQIA. Like all of the contributors are non-straight, contributing to an anthology about superheroes. We're all non-straight. So like
it's also a good alternative. Like if you're mad because Hercules isn't by, read our book instead.
On the back of my laptop, a sticker that my partner made for me. It's a platypus, and it says "Semper eam posse truthque," which is Latin for "It can always be hope." They are available on her Redbubble account, so yes, you can get one of those. We'll talk about this after. And I mean, we'll talk about this after. But that's my stance on this. I think both is powerful. I think both problematizes it and makes it clear. It's like, hey, that metaphor that we were talking about, we're also not talking about a metaphor. We're talking about a real thing. Like the idea of, I mean, I mentioned McCubbin earlier. You know, everything in Milestone did this like shockingly well. You're talking about a group of superpowered people who are trying to bring a sense of power and a sense of agency to a group of a community of people who have historically in this country specifically no power and agency. You know, you're looking at bringing cultural narratives to this very, very wide field, but doing so in a way that says there is something here that other people need to recognize. You need to see this.
I'm less positive. I'm not against stories as metaphors, but I think there are a lot of traps that often aren't thought through all the way. I do work in trauma studies, and so there's been some work there about if you've gone through a particularly traumatic experience, people who haven't gone through that experience are literally incapable of understanding it. So if you tell a story of a trauma, people who haven't been through a trauma cannot understand it as anything but a metaphor. They can't understand it. And so any use of like, so if you write a Holocaust story and you haven't lived through the Holocaust, or depending on who you're reading, or the descendant of the Holocaust survivor, so there's not like a cultural thing, ethnic thing, it's going to be a metaphor, and you're using it as a lens to talk about your own experience, and you're not dealing with anything that actually happened. You're ignoring all of that. I don't know that it necessarily has to be that way, but a lot of times it ends up working that way. And that's a really big problem. And I think too, it can be a problem because sometimes like I've fallen into the trap of being like, oh, well, I'm a woman, people of color are minorities, so like being a woman, I can understand what that's like. And that's a huge problem. Because even just like setting aside everything else, there are people who are people of color and women. So like the experience of one is a metaphor for the other. It just causes a lot of problems. So it may help, but you can't stop there.
I would, I have a lot of complicated feelings about X-Men.
You're in the right way.
Most of them comes down to when you're using a metaphor like the X-Men to talk about marginalization and oppression, it's complicated because you have to draw on the cultural resources as you understand them. So if your understanding of, say, the African American struggle for liberation comes through a largely sanitized history of that struggle, and you're using that as the ground to build your metaphor, then your metaphor will ring hollow to the people who understand that experience, but the people who you say aiming it at might understand it if they are sharing in that collective cultural history. Let me give you an example. When people talk about the distinction between Professor X and Magneto, they talk about it as a Martin-Malcolm distinction, which is completely hollow if you understand the kinds of ideologies that both of these men were working with and the directions that they wanted to take the African American community, and the fact that they really aren't as massively antagonistic towards one another as, you know, Professor X and Magneto do. So if you're going to use that as a particular kind of metaphor for an experience, for a cultural history, you got to get that history right first. And second of all, you have to kind of look at, or you have to think about what you want to do with that metaphor. You're just trying to say, hey, look, this is a metaphor for this thing that you probably should have learned about in school but weren't paying attention, I don't know what you're doing then. If you're saying, hey, look, this metaphor is to give you some idea of this lived experience of oppression, then that's a more effective thing. And just as the literal thing, for literal representation only works if that literal representation feels authentic to the group you're trying to represent. So I'll give you another example that a lot of people like to argue with me. I don't think T'Challa, Black Panther, is a particularly effective representation of, Black excellence for a couple of reasons. One, he's a Wakandan prince. He's not American. And I'm speaking within a local U.S. context, so I apologize. So he doesn't have that Black American experience. He's a man of privilege and wealth. Putting aside his, diplomatic immunity, he's not going to be the victim of, state-sanctioned violence through the police force, right? That's an international incident. He ate mystic flower that gave him superpowers. He's a member of the Illuminati, spoilers, sorry. Right? So you've got all of these levels of disconnect from the experience that character is supposed to represent to a group. It always rang a little hollow to me. So when you do that kind of representation, like you need to think about what it is you're trying to represent and what that representation is supposed to accomplish. If you're checking off a box on a list of things we have in our stable, but if you're trying to present a lived experience, then
I'm gonna vote very strongly for literal. But my literal is super, super literal. I literally want to see more people of color writing and drawing comic books. And that is where the biggest problem lies. Is that, like you were saying, if you do not understand the history and you're trying to talk to the history, yes, you can totally educate yourself, you can be more literate in your knowledge of those things, but it is the biggest issue in comics right now, is that there is not a single Black woman at either of the big two, even in editorial anymore, I think. There is, because they will often point to, oh, well, we have a lot of women of color in working in editorial.
Isn't Afua doing a DC book?
As I was going to say, the only one I know of is...
I mean, I'm not saying, like...
That is the only one I know of, and we had invited her to come tonight.
Afua Richardson was unfortunately, unable to make it to join us this evening. We would love to have her on this panel, but...
She has 20 minutes.
Yeah. It's been a long day, so it's been a long day for everybody, so we'll forgive her if she can't make it.
But it's the hiring practices need to change, and the myth of meritocracy needs to be blown up. Because this idea that, oh, well, we went and we found the best, the best person got the job. And it's like the best person from the pool, the small pool that you selected from, which is the people that you talked to.
Everyone at this small room party at San Diego Comic Con, I swear I looked at their...
Right, yeah, exactly. Or like all my bros totally hooked me up with people's portfolios, and I looked at those. And there are blind submissions, and there are things that get in through blind submissions. It does not happen as often as it should.
I want to actually briefly, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. I want to riff off of something that you were talking about, John, about the Mark Malcolm thing with Professor X and Magneto. If you actually look at the art of Magneto's character, it mirrors the translation and the transition that Brother Malcolm had over the course of his life. And you get to that Magneto was right, because we're talking about somebody who's not looking for this hard line secessionism, but he's talking about this by any means necessary, by literally any means, and if that means working with people who don't look like me and don't think like me, but who want to work with me, then I'm going to do it. And Magneto becomes more like that. Eric becomes more like that. It is more representative of Brother Malcolm's position in his later years. Now, it took them 50 years to get there. It took them 50 years of writing this cartoonish version of Malcolm X to actually fully express that, but they have kind of developed that. But I think that
specific process of, educating yourself about it.
I would like to talk to the other side of that. Professor X is a terrible civil rights leader. He is not anything like MLK. He specifically gathered everyone together and then said, "Don't tell anyone you're a mutant." So instead of putting on various other costumes and going into public and saying, "Hey, I'm a mutant," this is secret. I mean, I don't really know how brightly colored maybe. But so he's literally telling his students, do not tell anyone who you are. And yeah, there's the protection element, but like you don't see like X-Men on the news. Professor X would go on the news and say, "Hey, I'm an expert on mutants." No, I'm not one of them. The whole Malcolm X, MLK things that like the Professor X side is horrible.
Yeah, absolutely.
I didn't want to spend the rest of the 20 minutes.
Yeah, the other thing that I want to say on that one before we move on, and I guess just move on also, is like I'm a big fan of metaphor, but it depends on how you're doing it. Don't make Avatar.
Noble savage teach white. Thank you for that. Very, very important. Sir, you've been so patient.
You're so generous. Such an interesting. My name is Ahmedinus. I'm here from Los Angeles. I too teach for a living. So I want to take. I want to just kind of maybe problematize 3 ideas that were raised that I feel.
Dang, it got super academic in here, yo.
I would like to trouble the notion. I learned that one here last year.
I think to push back on the professor. I mean, I think part of what I've been a feminist for 22 years. I've been reading comics for one, and I came here because they told me there were stories about powerful women who chased society, and I became extremely engulfed and enamored by this space. And I think a lot of times what we do accidentally is we flatten identity. The black experience in America is not solely limited to the slave experience. American blackness is extremely diverse. If you watch a movie by Michael Wolff called The Prince Among Slaves, the trajectory of princes being captured from Africa and being brought here as slaves is something that is a core component of our understanding of the transatlantic slave trade. Blackness did not exist as a result of slavery. It existed before slavery. And so the idea that Chala would be something very different from the post-slave American reality, I think speaks to the potential diversity of the representation of blackness in what we're talking about as it relates to comics. And I totally understand how that can be seen from the opposite perspective. So, and I'm from Africa, and I see myself as a black man in America. And my parents are not the descendants of the slave experience. And when we talk about American blackness, I just think that we should yield to the proposition that a recognition of multiplicity renders a more powerful reality than attempting to flatten into a monolith, which I'm not saying you're attempting to do.
Academics, you're real fighting when you start saying this a monolith. Sorry.
I don't want them to think that all black people agree. Let's say some more things that I promise I'll say. And I'm speaking on Monday, so you can push back.
We're on the same panel.
Let's go to two more things that I think are really, really important. A lot of the conversation that we're having about knowing the other is knowing a static reality that is in the present, or talking about the experience that brought the other to the present. But very rarely are we talking about the potential future that can, the untested feasibility of what we can become together. And that's where Captain Marvel and Ms. Marvel and Bitch Planet really blew my mind. Because this issue of us thinking about a reality that does not exist today, but we believe is feasible, And thus, when we articulate it beautifully, like what Willow did in Ms. Marvel, right, then we all have an image that we can begin to migrate towards. And the last thing is, Carol Danvers chose not to be the ultimate ego identity of herself. There was a choice that was based on ethics that said, no, there are other things that are more important than for me to dominate in a way that pushes and permeates my ideas throughout society. And I think I speak to the sister that was in the back who was talking about, you know, her challenges on Twitter. Revolution requires the building of a critical consciousness. That requires that you test yourself, that you question yourself, that you understand your own impetus, your own ethics, your own beliefs, because only then will you be truly authentic in a way where we can all say, we want the world to be like you. We want the world to be composed of people who look inside before they engage on the outside to ensure that there is a truth that's being articulated.
I've never had this conversation.
I'm ready, brother.
So let's do this. Alright, so the T'Challa thing. So the flattening of the identity I completely understand, but when we take T'Challa and treat him as the representation of all that black excellence can be, we have flattened black excellence to a single static image, and that's my problem with T'Challa. Not that he's an African prince, not that he has all of these advantages, but that when we do treat him as the representation of all that black excellence can be, we ignore Miles Morales, we ignore Luke Cage, we ignore, what's the dude from Runaways, we ignore everything. Who is not T'Challa, and that is why I am not a fan of T'Challa as taken to be the exemplar black character, right? So it's got nothing to do with, you know, the annihilation of the multiplicity of blackness. It's the fact that even we as black people will say, look at all that T'Challa is, look at this great character. No, there is more to it than that. So we're in agreement on that. I'm glad you quoted Freire at me towards the end with the revolutionary consciousness and the concept
recognize real.
I apologize to my panelists for going crazy on that. You press the berserk button. His advice on constantly testing yourself, looking inside, and so on and so forth. He directs that at the allies, right? Yeah, he does. He says to be an authentic ally, you have to constantly test yourself when you engage with
as the oppressed.
Well, you're talking about the oppressed who are sitting in the secondary stage of liberation, who see themselves through the image of the oppressor, right? There is also that part in Pedagogy of the Press, and we can talk about this afterwards. So on Monday. Right, so we could. You're catching me at the end of the.
Brought this onto the internet, like we could like sell tickets.
Right. You're catching me at the end of the night, so I can't quite articulate the thing. Yeah, but the thing with Captain Marvel being the representation of the possibility of all we can be. So Kelly Sue has this part in Captain Marvel where she's talking about a girl running so fast that she takes off and then the world doesn't pull on her, and how she has to go to the edge of herself to see what she can be. So, not to plug my panel, but that's my paper. Monday, right? It starts with that panel because it's, I'm not going to go into it, but that, I agree. That is what Captain Marvel does so very well.
It seems like until now we've disagreed on nothing.
Like,
so I guess, yeah, I'm done.
Jamie, can I ask a favor? We're gonna actually talk to this young lady in the red robe. quick because she was next in our line, and then the young woman in the white will get the very last comment question. So, sweet.
That was literally the best part.
Thank you.
I'm actually in the same place, but my question is a disability question. So, just how comics, I don't really read comics right now.
Let's fix
too much. I know, I want to, and I'm just like, I don't know where to start. But,
Your
how
sweat's
comics,
free, honey.
how comics deal with disability, and like, I know, Marvel movies, like, specifically like Narcissus is kind of my favorite. Like, and how comics deal with disability, and like, how sometimes they, like, he loses his arm, but now he has like this awesome metal arm, and I'm like, well, that's not always the case. You know, and then Matt Murdock, like, he can't see, but he can see.
He's got awesome superpowers that replace the seeing.
But it's disability, and it's also not at the same time it's a superpower. Read Hawkeye.
So,
Hawkeye.
Yeah, we know that. Disability, and I'm sorry again for hopping in.
I'm going to say something here when you get
Disability in comics is, with very few wonderful exceptions, treated as you either get superpowers from it, or it's something that it can be fixed, right? Disability isn't something, like, if we were going to talk about my ADHD as a superpower, no. While, sure, I have moments of extreme focus where I get a lot of stuff done, the rest of my lived experience is like having a bunch of TVs in my head with people changing the channel and I have no control over it. It's not fun, and comics doesn't do a good job with that. So you have disabled characters who get this thing that conditions how they live and experience the world fixed. That doesn't happen for us. It's not, I'm trying to, okay, so there are three ways they treat it. You either get superpowers from it, you can fix it, or you're cursed with suck, as in the ultimate version of Moira McTaggart's island. Every mutant on that island's disability is treated as some massive disfigurement which requires them to be hidden away from the rest of society so that the nice mutants can be treated as the face, and it's terrible. So I have real deep issues with the way that disability is portrayed in comics, with notable exceptions, Hawkeye, sex criminals, and there's one character who lost an arm and it's a prosthetic, it's a mechanical arm, and she doesn't wear it all the time, and she taught her boyfriend to do her hair because she can't. Thank you. Okay, yeah, I'm sorry, it's late. Things are wearing off. Misty Knight, that part right there where it's shown where she's not wearing her arm all the time, and she has taught her boyfriend to do her hair, is both powerful not only along racial lines, but it demonstrates the way that people's disabilities affect their very basic lived experience, and sometimes we just want to exist without the things that allow us to exist in normal society.
And I believe that issue was written by Jeremy Whitney, who also does Princeless, the aforementioned.
Dale and The Walking Dead. Lost his leg.
I haven't.
Walking Dead's a world without superpowers, though, so that's like.
It's a comic book.
It is.
It's not. You're not going to get the augmentation aspect that we're seeing in a lot of the question. Like, there's a lot of the work that I do is philosophy of technology and augmentation and AI and things like that. So I think about the kind of question that you're talking about from a different angle. The question of, does the person who loses their legs, who gets prosthetic legs, where they adjust the height and the tensile strength and the speed of them, is that person disabled? Because that person now has more ability than I do. And what you're seeing in comics, what you're seeing in media, is that that's always been the case. The person, as John said, the person who gets disabled, who gets the replacement arm this is the person who is now, they're set apart, yes, but they're not set apart in that same way that people's disabilities set them apart in our area